You've seen dogfights in films, quick turns, missiles, and close shaves. But here's something you don't see often: pilots running out of fuel mid-fight because their fighters couldn't launch at full power. That's exactly what happened when China deployed J-15s from their carrier's ski jump deck. US pilots, trained for decades in high-intensity air combat, exploited every weakness. Curious to find out what happened when an American Super Hornet inverted just yards from a Chinese jet. That maneuver changed the encounter's entire tone. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. How could a single radar contact turn into one of the tensest moments in the South China Sea? For the crew aboard the USS Princeton, it started with one faint blip, suddenly stretching and surging forward on the screen. The classification tag identified it as a Chinese Type 052D destroyer, and within seconds, its speed markers doubled. Instead of holding steady, the ship angled sharply across Princeton's path at 30 knots, closing distance with a speed that left little time to think. Officers leaned over glowing monitors, cycling through data as the destroyer's trajectory lit up red, showing the kind of collision course that can only mean one thing: provocation. Princeton's captain calculated quickly. 14 minutes. That was the window until this destroyer would enter missile range. 14 minutes may sound like a lot, but on the water, it vanishes quickly. Radios buzzed, crew braced, engineers cross-checked propulsion systems. While on radar, the Chinese contact grew larger by the minute. Each second carried the weight of choices that might have to be made: maneuver to avoid, posture for strength, or prepare to strike back if weapons flashed. This wasn't an ordinary encounter. Destroyers in the South China Sea often shadow each other, watching, signaling intent, sometimes mirroring moves. But this approach felt different. Instead of peeling off or keeping distance, the Chinese warship pushed forward as if daring a collision. As Princeton prepared to signal intentions, more icons appeared on the radar display. One foreign destroyer grew into several, and within an hour, a full Chinese carrier group entered the zone. What began as a single contested path had escalated into a standoff with dozens of ships, each carrying weapons capable of reaching far beyond the horizon. The control center swelled with noise. Alerts chimed, priority channels came alive, crews strapped in at their stations. The commander's mind weighed the tactical math. Princeton might be just one warship, but behind her loomed staggering firepower. A single Arleigh Burke-class guided missile cruiser holds 122 vertical launch cells, each capable of carrying Tomahawks, surface-to-air interceptors, or anti-submarine ordnance. By contrast, the Chinese destroyer bore far fewer. The aggression was one thing. The ability to back it up was another. Yet Beijing knew the numbers, so the question lingered: what was to gain from pushing this far? The answer goes beyond steel and missiles. This sea carries the lifelines of the global economy. Every year, more than $3.4 trillion in trade flows across these waters. Oil, natural gas, raw minerals, consumer goods, all riding these lanes like blood through arteries. Any disruption, even the shadow of potential conflict, sends ripples worldwide. Analysts often warn it's not single ship clashes that raise the stakes, but the precedent they set. If China can edge carriers into contested waters and force the US to respond, Beijing can claim symbolic control, even without firing a shot. But the intimidation game carried costs. Washington refused to yield. The destroyer's reckless advance did not back Princeton away. It triggered reinforcement. Within hours, US Fleet Command expanded operations into a full carrier task group deployment, an unmistakable signal that intimidation would not corner American vessels. This was not just destroyer against cruiser anymore. It became an entire naval chessboard, with fighters, radar planes, submarines, and electronic warfare craft soon feeding into the equation. And on that chessboard, surface maneuvers were only the opening act. Air power and undersea forces were about to tilt the balance in ways no radar screen alone could track. What happens when dozens of fighters launch into combat with limited fuel and half payload capacity? That's the risk Chinese pilots faced late that morning. At 09:35 local time, the carrier Shandong began hurling J-15s off its ski jump deck. The steep incline allowed them to get airborne without catapults, but the trade-off was clear. Each fighter left the deck lighter, carrying less fuel and fewer weapons, forced to choose between longer time in the sky or heavier strike payloads. As they climbed sluggishly above the sea, their range already narrowed before meeting the American air wing, waiting just beyond radar horizon. The Americans had been watching the launch unfold from hundreds of miles away. Two E-2D Hawkeyes circled high, their massive radars pulling in a wide picture of the battle space, capable of tracking threats from more than 400 miles. The information streamed down into the carrier strike group and across escorting ships, building a real-time display of Chinese aircraft formations before the Shandong's own sensors could see the U.S. fighters. Within moments, EA-18G Growlers joined in, their powerful jamming pods flooding enemy frequencies, filling Chinese radar consoles with static and ghost signatures that appeared and vanished without warning. Inside the Shandong's command center, already under pressure from the destroyer confrontation earlier, battle leaders watched their situational map collapse. 1 minute, it displayed clean tracks, J-15s arrayed in a wide sweep to protect the carrier. The next, dozens of false readings swiped across screens like static waterfalls. Communications garbled. Radar pings contradicted each other. Voices over the net questioned whether U.S. fighters were high, low, or even behind them. The electronic fog made coordination nearly impossible, leaving pilots to depend on short bursts of radio orders and visual sightings. Meanwhile, U.S. pilots moved into layered formation. High-altitude flights carried long-range missiles. Middle strata tightened control with close escorts, and low-flying Super Hornets skimmed close to wave tops, ready to reach in for dogfight ranges unseen by high-angle radars. Together, they created 3 overlapping walls. Any J-15 group that broke through one altitude would run into another barrier stacked directly underneath. The limited endurance of Chinese jets meant every minute wasted probing these formations drained fuel tanks thinner, compressing their timeline for actual strikes. The technology gap showed everywhere. American APG-79 AESA radars continued tracking targets fluidly, holding each jet in constant lock instead of mechanically sweeping side to side. That meant U.S. pilots could fire missiles the moment range matched, with continuous updates guiding weapons toward the J-15s. Chinese radars, based on older systems, dropped tracks whenever fighters maneuvered too hard, creating blind spots in fast-paced exchanges. Each time a J-15 twisted sideways or dipped into cloud cover, American sensors held while Chinese arrays lost them. As the air battle thickened, another shock surfaced. 6 miles off Shandong's starboard, the ocean sprayed open and a black hull broke the waves. A Virginia-class U.S. submarine rose to periscope depth, lingered under 30 seconds, then disappeared, leaving ripples as proof. The message landed harder than any missile could. Shandong was within lethal torpedo reach the entire time. By early afternoon, China's sudden deployment had been surrounded in every domain. The destroyers forced back by missile walls, the J-15s scattered and short on fuel, their flagship shadowed undersea by silent stalkers. Hours after escalation, Beijing's task force peeled away, boxed in, and unable to press forward. Yet while the aircraft cleared the skies, the confrontation was far from over. Storms of rhetoric, legal claims, and diplomatic challenges would soon follow, shifting the battlefield from ocean waves to international courts and conference tables. China's sharp move in the South China Sea revealed more than intent. It exposed how limited range, outdated sensors, and vulnerable command systems cut into its ability to contest a modern fight. U.S. forces countered seamlessly across air, sea, and undersea, reinforcing a dominance built on layered technology and practiced coordination. But these encounters are more than tactical matches. Each has implications for trade routes, maritime law, and freedom of navigation rights that carry the global economy. The real question isn't who scored points in this clash, but how many more the world can endure before one mistake ignites war.